There used to be a point in time where if you had a hot take, the best way to monetize it was to tweet it. We think that we're entering an era where, with products like Cesto emerging and the world that's being built out, when you have a hot take, trading it will become the new tweeting it.
I really want to understand your worldview. I could feel like your product is a lens through which you view the world.
Every financial product will become a story. If you think 12 tons of KitKat is getting stolen is a viral story, that's going to lead to market movement as a secondary action.
Jason, the founder and CEO of Cesto, on a mission to end one-size-fits-all finance. A former semiconductor researcher turned operator whose work has reached over 3 million users. He is pioneering what he calls the editorialization of finance, where every product becomes a story and every hot take becomes a tradable basket. Built on Solana, fully non-custodial, and powered by Camino, Jito, Jupiter, and IKA, Cesto aspires to be the new paintbrush for how the next generation will invest.
How do you create this basket?
Right now, it's literally as simple as telling Claude, hey, I want to build a basket on Cesto. Can you do it for me? In fact, one of our popular baskets that came straight out of community, and this truly illustrates the power of community, was the Inverse Anthropic portfolio. A portfolio of companies that Anthropic eats the lunch off every time they make a release. It is catering to this thesis of AI is eating the world. Buying Inverse of tech stocks is one mechanism to actually index on it. We're big fans of what the team at IKA are building. One of the things that they enable is Bridgeless Capital Markets, is a way for people to buy a basket on the chain that it's available using currency that's sitting elsewhere, or controlling a basket using a wallet across different chains. This is one of the innovations that I think is going to power a lot of applications.
I can remember times in India where you had restrictions on how much money you can invest in US stocks. Money always lived inside a particular geography. Why do you think blockchains are the best rail for this?
Blockchains are the one way you can enable that. Person sitting in Kenya that's paying for their daughter's school fees could now suddenly access different investment opportunities or equities in a way that was never possible before.
How do you think about the angle of self-custody? How important do you think it is in regards to the product you're building?
Anytime you have someone that says, Suraj, why don't you give me your money? I'm going to manage a phone. There is a non-zero likelihood that you may not get the money back. Whereas when you own the underlying asset, but the asset manager is managing the asset, but that sits inside your wallet, you're adhering to the fundamental principle of crypto, which is self-custody.
Hey, Jason. Welcome to Just the Metrics podcast. Excited to have this conversation because you have a super innovative and interesting product. And when I looked into the website and the concept, I was like, this is really clever. This is great. And at the same time, I also heard that you are also building with technologies like IKA. I'm super thrilled to have this conversation. And before going deep into it, could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, of course, Suraj. Firstly, thank you for having me here. I'm super excited to chat with you about the kind of stuff we're building and cooking up at our end. And thank you so much for the compliment about the brand and the design. I think that's something we've tried to really hit home with. So my name is Jason, and I'm the founder of Cesto. At Cesto, we're on a mission to end one-size-fits-all finance. And one of the biggest, making sure that everyone has access to high quality opportunities is one of the things I strongly believe in. And we as a company have been striving towards to build accessible financial products. I'm currently in Miami, but that said, I really like meeting with interesting people and chatting about distribution, brand, design, and iterating on ideas. I've been an operator and a founder for the greater part of the last decade. And I'm very excited to chat with you today. And I think we're going to unpack something really fun.
Yeah, I think so too, because we chatted before we click recording, and even on Telegram. I really want to understand your worldview of how, I could feel like your product is a lens through which you view the world. And it includes a lot of macro factors, a lot of technology factors. And that kind of mental model is something I, as a person, super interested in understanding, because when you talk to founders, especially, who basically very opinionated people in the stuff they are building, at the same time, that also reflects their worldview and how they think the world is going. So that like the more you have such conversation, you get an idea of, where things are heading. And I think such interesting products that also shows where things are going. In that sense, could you unpack your mental model, not even about the product, how you think about the world, technology, and where things are heading?
Yeah, 100%. I think the last decade, if you look at it, has been one where media financialized quite heavily. So think of all the cultural icons that Taylor Swift, Jay-Z, Ryan Reynolds, whole host of others that had like massive brands and then built products on top of the brand in order to sell to their audience. And it was the age of the attention economy where impressions translated into some form of like yield, leverage, etc. And a lot of people bought into this. I actually think that the next decade is going to be completely different. It's actually going to be quite the opposite in the way in which people think about it. I think that I think that finance is actually editorializing. So what I mean by that is more and more, and this is quite pertinent to you as well in the stuff that you're building, right? I think that the way the world is evolving right now, you have more and more people that are making investment decisions on the basis of stories, lore, and other people's opinions and brands. My dad, as an example, has never read through an investment prospectus. He typically watches YouTube and invests off of that. Same for my little cousins. And I find this quite fascinating because the more you look at it, there is trading getting integrated into news consumption venues like X and prediction markets that are editorializing a bit more of life events that are occurring. Similarly, like meme coins brought culture into like finance in some sense. And I think that this era of finance editorializing means that every financial product will become a story. If you think 12 tons of KitKat is getting stolen is a viral story, that's going to lead to market movement as a secondary like action. And as a result of that, with these new behaviors, the way the entry points and the way in which people actually consume these things is also fundamentally changing. We're retrofitting our current behaviors to the old mental model of having trading and consumption of financial information be separate. But at Cesto, one of the things we wonder is why not have a world where we mimic how people behave to how the world operates at this point? And so we're building modern infrastructure for the new financial world that we see that's going to dictate the rules and the realms for the next decade. And we're very excited by it.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of really interesting points. If you go deeper into that concept of finance is editorializing, what is it like? How do you explain someone who basically understands how the world works? How do you explain such a person about that particular angle?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think right now we live through a world where most financial products look the same. They have the same look and feel. It's just numbers on a screen that differ. And if you look at most competitor products, it's very hard to actually differentiate. You may go by the brand of the overarching entity, but never the brand of the financial product. But somehow, when you consume financial information, think your Substack that you consume that has very niche information about supply chain, Cetrini research about a Strait of Hormuz in the price of oil and gas. You're consuming very specific information that's helping you make a trade. But somehow, there's all these financial products that have been built based on how the world used to operate. Whereas now, people are operating on the basis of vibes, sentiment, emotion, headlines. And we think that more and more people, the way GameStop and Wall Street bets occurred, where community drove specific financial outcome and virality led to market movements, we believe that there's a world where that is the norm. That is how we invest. And the current world of wrapper products, which are no doubt convenient, where you can in one click invest into a theme, are outdated as of the 90s. And now we're entering an era where something new is fundamentally possible, something that's personalized, something that's specific to you, something that is editorially catered to where you live, what you do, that can deliver an experience that's genuinely joyful and also deliver the financial acumen that you're looking for. So think better returns, but more editorialized like worldview. And the best way to view it is, I think, by showing you the product itself. So most financial products that are out there are super vanilla. They tend to be quite boring if you think about it. They're like tables and like just numbers on a screen. Whereas if you think about it, financial products are stories. When a person buys a stock like Palantir, they're buying into AI being the future. They're buying into a vision of the future that's going to enable a specific outcome. Same for Nvidia, same for like all of the other AI stocks. Similarly, when a person shorts some of these stocks, they're looking at Michael Berry, the guy who called Big Short, shorting a particular stock and saying, hey, this person is smart. They did it. I think they know what they're talking about. And I think all of the world operates on the exact same narrative, sentiments, and heuristics to actually drive a specific outcome. And what we've effectively done is built a financial product that now reflects the same underlying understanding that, hey, every product in finance can actually have its own identity, its own brand, its own standalone outcome that stands it up beyond just the percentage on the screen. But what's beautiful about doing that is that because it's so topical, you also have financial returns that it's underpinned by that are significantly higher than what the market could provide. Like typical ETFs would do anything between 0 and 20% if you're lucky. If you're very lucky, it's going to do 20% and beat inflation. But somehow what we've managed to figure out is that if virality is the basis of, and headlines are the basis of how people interact with the financial system, there is a lot more intermediate term arbitrage that a person can do that creates a lot more meaningful outcome. And that, I think, is the world that is going to be super, super interesting. And this is what I mean when I say finance is editorialized. To put things into perspective, this is the Franklin Templeton Metaverse AI and Blockchain ETF. Now, great product, hundreds of millions of dollars under assets under management. Not a single person reads this before going and investing. Not even the people that are curating these, not even the people that are on the other side. It's sold as a back-end product to few funds, etc. And it's quite different out there. And we think finance can be beautiful, finance can be accessible, and simultaneously it can be something that people resonate with, the way people love Netflix. And what Netflix did to movies and YouTube did to content, we believe that we're going to do to all of modern financial infrastructure. And this is the world we're excited.
How opinionated someone has to be to, so are these for opinionated people, or are these to people who just want to put their money, like it takes directly from your account,
Set and
go
forget.
to the like a certain percent of salary? Like, for whom is this product actually?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the way we view it, the product actually caters to people who sit within the set and forget basket as well. Because in essence, you have a lot of all-weather baskets that automatically rebalance and do the job of making sure that your money basically works for you across the time. And you also have the more adventurous people that are now able to, and the more opinionated people that are able to tap into like more opinionated baskets that may have a shorter term renewal cycle. But that said, the product allows you to now sell like have a all-weather basket as well. That means that you can now park your stable coins or your soul into things that in a broad gambit just move in the right direction for you.
You are saying that there will be an like option for everyone depending upon your risk tolerance and your opinion. There will be like different kind of baskets. And the question is, how does these baskets get curated? And let's start with that. Like, how does it get curated?
Yeah, great question. Currently, as it stands, a lot of the baskets are curated on the basis of things that people want or things that people are really engaging with. So we watch a lot of analytics across what people are looking into in order to explore what they buy. Currently, what we observed as things that people really resonate with are themes around access to information that's already out there, but how do they convert it into trades? So this included the more topical themes around defense and oil and gas and AI, etc. But that said, these themes can keep evolving. The way we view it, when we build meaningful infrastructure that creates these outcomes, we're rather theme and idea agnostic. We actually see ourselves being the backend infrastructure that enables smart people that have a very strong opinionated view of the world to express themselves in a more meaningful way. Think like really thoughtful people that have had like specific backgrounds across finance or a specific domain of expertise to now build out meaningful products. So the implication for people like yourself that may have a specific domain, think the doctor that's plugged into a specific type of medical equipment that understands the supply chain deeply and sees specific things and is now able to make very specific financial judgment because they know what's happening. Or think about me, like I used to be a semiconductor researcher. And in my domain, I used to really love to explore what the implication of hardware today is on software tomorrow. And so for me, that correlation meant I could take positions across the globe that I would be in the top 1 percentile or top 0.001 percentile of. What Cesto enables is for these ideas to be codified and expressed in a way that is tradable, investable, and all in one click in a more meaningful sense.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. In a sense, that's where you have some special knowledge things that other people are not seeing. And based upon that, you can curate a basket. What are the components involved? Think about some macro. You need like a lot of US. If you need like derivatives of stocks. Like how does that process looks like? How does someone create a basket?
Yeah, really good question. So as of now, creating a basket is super simple. You can design the name, design a description, and start adding components and describe why they work for this specific basket. So one of the baskets, like as an example, that was created by a season ticket holder for Arsenal, a football club in England. He's a diehard fan, has like distribution of his own, and doesn't know about a whole lot about like how he could monetize besides content. But now all of a sudden he's presented with a way in which he can build a basket out of it. So tokenized equities that are out there let you index across travel, tourism, sponsors, all that correlate directly to outcomes in a meaningful way, in addition to prediction markets perps. We think that the paintbrushes that are available out there that you can put into a basket do sufficiently correlate to the real world. So think if you want to build a basket that's about the World Cup that's happening in the US this year, anything that reflects travel, tourism, sponsors, and the different stadiums, the growth that a city experiences can all be codified and directly correlated to this. This is, in fact, how financial analysts look at the world when they're building the early semblances of a financial product as well, which is, hey, what are the building blocks that we have at hand? And the way I view it also is about 6 months ago, the volumes and the numbers of like paintbrushes we had were actually quite few in number. But if you look at the explosion of this, it's grown over 1000x since last year, the amount of volume that RWAs have. Simultaneously, you also have all of these new assets that have come live. You can invest into all sorts of stocks, all sorts of like different tools. Prediction markets are giving you access to a whole new asset class with a whole new set of liquidity that suddenly gives you a worldview. Imagine a world where you can use these in order to paint the world in your own way. And we think that there is going to be a place and time where you will be able to fully express this. And we're building for that world at this point.
For example, 1,000 USDC in your wallet, like how do you create like this basket? Like just to understand a specific example, like, yeah, you have some money, you have some information. How do you create a basket?
Yeah, absolutely. So we make it very easy for a person to codify their idea. Right now, it's literally as simple as telling Claude, hey, I want to build a basket on Cesto. Can you do it for me? And like we've built out clear skills that let a user that has context interact using natural language, just English, to your Claude or your ChatGPT to then go out and build. So You may have research that you've done, or you may have research that you want to do. But then, like, it successfully uses AI to combine some of these things and then build it out with you. So uses it as a collaborator of sorts. In addition to that, for people that want to explore and keep tweaking it, you also have the option of just going, and we've launched a product in beta called Labs that lets you literally name a basket, describe it, and start adding assets that reflect your idea theme almost instantaneously.
Then basically, if you create a basket and you have conviction, and as you said, you can have your own Substack where you talk about your thesis about this basket, and your basically your investment thesis and how you would view the world. And maybe like I read your Substack and I am convinced with, oh, this is cool. Then I have like maybe 100K and I can just subscribe to this basket and put that 100K in the basket, or how does that work?
Yes, that's correct. That's exactly how it is. So the moment you feel like you resonate with someone's hot take, Substack, or their view of the world, they're as simple as the way they would give you a link tree with all of their purchases. They would also be able to give you eventually a basket that could eventually be like a little QR code that you're able to scan and go into it. Given its financial infrastructure, would end user experience agnostic in that it is possible for this experience to be delivered either using a iOS app where it's just super fast to move, kind of like Robinhood in some sense. Very fast, very simple, easy to use, and moves into it. And you can always, like, we believe in giving users awareness of all the steps that are occurring. So being able to verify, to view, to engage with is a really important component of this. Yeah. And the other thing I would add is with regards to the change at how we view the world, there used to be a point in time where if you had a hot take, the best way to monetize it was to tweet it. We think that we're entering an era where with products like Cesto emerging and the world that's being built out, when you have a hot take, trading it will become the new tweeting it. And that, I think, is where you're going to have truly, truly magical products being created. Think the Substack like user that has like hundreds of thousands of followers, that has a very strong opinion of the world and how it's moving, that a lot of their users are resonating, obviously, because they follow him and engage with the content on an ongoing basis. Now suddenly have a way to engage with this that is beyond just clicking on the Substack or subscribing, but also one level up from that, which is like, how do you actually put money where your mouth is? And creators as well, we envision will start to quickly earn by it. So as an example, you're a creator, and when you end up building like meaningful content with like founders, imagine being able to have a Suraj basket that like gives people to access to a specific outcome. I think that that's a really cool world out there.
If you curate a basket, do you get some percentage of like fees, or is there a monetary part where you profit from people putting money in it?
Yes, we do envision a place where creators of baskets are able to earn through it, and yeah, and then just build the world that they see. At the end of the day, the users, and the way in which we do it, the users end up making these bets on their own. We just help the users, like the Cesto is just transaction assembling infrastructure for a lot of the people. So in some sense, we're not actually, it's not unlike a traditional ETF or a vault. You as a creator don't need to, like, there's a lot of hassle you would otherwise have to go through in order for this to be a reality. You'd have to bootstrap liquidity, buy a lot of the underlying assets in order to buy and sell. You would have to go through multiple rounds of like technical analysis in order to build out and compliance. And this is extremely complicated. So what we're doing effectively with Cesto is giving creators a new paintbrush to view the world that lets their hot takes and opinions be stuff that they actually are able to monetize in the form of basket.
Going back to the point of finance is editorializing. If you see it from a societal point of view, there are like we are living in a world where like a huge amount of changes are happening. First of all, the boomers are all retiring. So it's a whole generational shift in a way. The biggest generation in the Western world is retiring. And you are seeing like a lot of demographic changes in terms of cultural shift in West. And at the same time, like a lot of deindustrialization of West also plays a role. AI is coming at the same time. And we have a lot of political uncertainties. And at the same time, one of the biggest things is debasement, which makes people in our generation think that, oh, our job alone is not going to enable us to truly make it in life. So that's the intersection where I think a lot of attention is going to the financial products. How can I understand the world and make money from it? Prediction market is a really early sign of that. If you like, Bitcoin is actually the first sign of that. Do you think this aligns with the trend where finance, like baskets and curating it, this is the next thing? Do you think that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think, as we spoke about while we were getting started on the recording, I think the world is indeed going through a really rapid change on a variety of factors. A lot of the population pyramid, or like the demographic of the world, is skewing towards fewer young people, with like fertility rates dropping, all of that. And then again, in the macro, you have AI and this looming the sentiment of AI taking jobs away. And then again, on the other side, you have like an increased uncertainty around global supply chains and all of that. And currently, if you ask me, this is probably going to be my hot take, is I think a user is, or I think as a person starting out right now, you're better off building leverage through distribution, ideas, and just a financial platform over time. Because the only way to grow at this point, or if you think about maybe, let's say, 20 years ago, the way to grow that we had like clearly recognized was one where you invest into masters, PhD in a specific domain, build a lot of domain expertise in order to build conviction towards the world, and then you'd graduate and you'd have a job. And so this investment would pay off in some sense. Now we're living through an interesting world where that is probably true for really deep tech domains. But that said, the greater majority of people, that is like people sitting at the 80-20 on this, are definitely having to reconcile with their worldview with what is possible and what's not. And one of the things that I find beautiful with regards to financial access is that people have always wanted these opportunities. I think growing up, my parents would always send money offshores and try to tap into equities that were like, and you probably also realize this, as immigrants living in a country, finding the best yield opportunity meant doing things that resonated with your long-term goals, etc. And I think with the borderless nature of crypto and more assets coming live, I think there is a good way for people to now utilize the opportunities that are coming on chain, the assets that are coming on chain, to now create more meaningful outcome and more surface area by creating a distribution platform for their niche skill, and then be able to go and monetize that in a meaningful way. We think that distribution has always been like important, but now more than ever, if you ask me, it's one of the most important things. And once you have distribution, figuring out ways that you leverage on top of that is we just want to play into that more and support people that that have a niche and have a categorical obsession with certain domains. And I think personally that there is a non-zero likelihood that in the next 5 years you're going to have more people that create meaningful content around different things, as well as create different outcomes through that content. And we just want to be powering some of that for people.
Why do you think blockchains are the best rail for this? Or why is all this innovation, all these new products are happening on blockchain rails, not on Web2 platforms?
Yeah, good question. I think all this while, new cycles of innovation have always been built on the backs of railroads that have existed. Think social media as a platform for individuals, or mobile as a platform for social media, or compute as a platform for mobile, right? So we've always had cycles of innovation that have been built on the back of railroads that have, and this goes back to the dawn of time more meaningfully. And I think that about now, with the sheer availability that you have, you can create a lot of meaningful outcomes through having that baseline distribution. And I think the analogy you use there, which is like a Twitter account, is like the access to the globe. is really meaningful because the world is inherently global and you're getting access to it. Now, the common trends in all of the things that I pointed out so far are this like factor of globalization of tech. So far, if you think about globalization of finance, we've had things like Swift transfer that have become like easier over time, right? And banking that's made it easier across certain geographies. But when you think about the mechanics of how people invest into different things, that's been largely opaque when it comes to different geographies. And the globalization vector for that has been missing for a long time. Blockchains are the one way you can enable that. A person sitting in Kenya that's paying for their daughter's school fees could now suddenly access different investment opportunities or equities in a way that was never possible before to now actually tap into a market that they previously did not have access to. So I think this idea of globalization and access, as well as with all of the assets coming live, is what I think is the new railroad for financial distribution that hasn't existed before. And so the last 6 months, what we've witnessed, while it appears to be change in the industry and change of pace, I think it's nothing short of phenomenal. The kind of things that have been coming live, because the downstream implications of that are you now have 300 million people that have been looking for access to ETFs on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange that are now getting access to that. Similarly, you have about 1 billion people that have had no access to US ETFs and equities and upside to these markets that now suddenly have access in a accessible, compliant way. And that, I think, creates a lot of opportunity to bring the world together for information to flow and effectively create a world where all of the information has already been globalized. People are already subscribed to these feeds. There's people all across the globe subscribed to the Substack of this person that's sitting in Asia and building out a specific product. But now all of a sudden, you also have the ability to access their worldview in a truly hands-on sense. And I think that is truly unique. And I think there's no other technology that can enable that other than blockchains and crypto right now for this specific use case.
Yeah, 100%. I think permissionlessness, in the sense that anybody can, it basically gives access, as you said. And that is hugely valuable because before, I can remember times in India where you had restrictions on how much money you can invest in US stocks. There were it was capped. Money always lived inside a particular geography. And
Yes.
even if you know someone living in India that at that time, like Apple is going to be huge, like from a conceptual perspective, you understand that, oh, this company is going to be incredibly successful. There is no way you can actually profit from it. It was very restricted. And I think, as you said, the opportunity that you have now, you can have this access to make money based on your research conviction, the way you see the world is moving. That is, and when I thought about basket, like on Polymarket or Kalshi, you can put a yes or no based on a particular incident. But I think it is a basket itself is like that, but with multiple components. Can you short a basket? So, for example, someone created a basket. Like a lot of people would say yes, they put money in it. Can I say no to that basket? Or is it possible?
Yeah, great question. I think so far one of the things we often get from our users as well is this question about, hey, you let me buy a basket in one click. Can I lend it in one click? Can I short it in one click? Can I move it around and stake it in one click? Can I borrow against it in one click? And the answer to all of this, because you own the underlying asset, is yes and yes, right? So at the end of the day, I think because baskets tell a story and stories are things people resonate with, there are chances people don't resonate with these stories and may want the exact opposite of what's being presented. And so we do enable different mechanisms for people to do it. With prediction markets, you have binary outcomes, but in case of tokens, equities, you have different interesting instruments like perps and different portfolios that actually let you track the inverse of what's happening. In fact, one of our popular basket I like that came straight out of community. And this like truly illustrates the power of community was the inverse anthropic portfolio. So what that was, a portfolio of companies that Anthropic eats the lunch off every time they make a release. And it's funny because this, in essence, every time this happens, like this is a simple idea, but it is catering to this thesis of AI is eating the world. But it's doing that, like buying like inverse of tech stocks is one mechanism to actually index on it. And we think that there's going to be more such products that allow for you to do this. Inverse Kramer basket, which is Jim Cramer calls a specific one. Can you like track the inverse of it? We think that there's going to be a lot more of that and we're here for it. So definitely, like the answer is yes. There will be like ways in which you can make that happen.
Yeah, like that would be cool because I think that opens up a lot of possibilities, even leverage. Can I leverage this basket? And I think, can I like long and short leverage? Like, I think that opens up a lot of interesting possibilities to, that's what open innovation like on blockchain, on financial product actually enables. And one of the things, like you mentioned that these are basically assets that you own. So if you look at baskets, like what is happening under the hood? What assets am I really owning by putting that money into that basket?
The way in which a basket currently operates is, let's say you put in $1,000 into a specific idea headline. Under the hood, what is actually occurring is that the $1,000 lines up a set of swaps that all lead to the asset that you're swapping for to end up within your wallet. It happens, and what we focus on is this like bundling aspect and making sure it lands 100% of the time, thanks to our partners at Jito and a few others on Solana. And the underlying innovation there is that now, unlike other places where you're giving the money and then you're receiving like a receipt token that, hey, we have your asset, here you're owning the underlying asset. So that means that you can deviate from the strategy, you can try out different things, you can also get rebalancing updates every time the portfolio drifts to ensure that you keep up to date on that basket's thesis for the reason that you bought it. Now, this suddenly presents a very interesting, and all of these design decisions are very conscious. So the fact that you're able to buy it in a bundle or a basket means that now when you fork a basket, let's say you have a lot of NVIDIA exposure and you don't want that, you can now fork a basket very effortlessly, in fact. And that suddenly creates like new financial products, new innovation a lot faster. Unlike the other systems where you now have to spend time, develop a thesis, and then you are committed to that thesis for a long time because investors that may have bought into a specific thing. I think this suddenly creates a new world, a new paintbrush, a new worldview. And I think that is fundamentally where I think the world is heading more and more. And think of Cesto's platform as goggles that let you see all the underlying assets that you have. But you can also see the underlying breakdown of, hey, how much has the stuff I've bought grown in the last few weeks?
Going back to the original story of how I heard about Cesto is through some of the team members of IKA protocol talking about Cesto. And to give you some context, IKA originally, you know what IKA is, but to give the audience some context, IKA is a signer layer, a protocol that is basically allow you to have control assets on different chain without actually bridging. That's the way I understood it. And initially started in Sui, and now they are expanding to Solana. And I heard that Cesto is now integrating IKA. What does that mean? Could you break down this particular angle?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're big fans of what the team at IKA are building. And one of the things that they enable or associate themselves to is bridgeless capital markets, which is an extension of like internet capital markets. And to us, what that means is that a lot of the concepts that are hard across bridging and chains and accessing opportunities across different ecosystems get abstracted away in a meaningful way. And so far, one of the things that IKA has enabled is a way for people to buy a basket on the chain that it's available using currency that's sitting elsewhere, or controlling a basket using a wallet across different chains. Now, this for us is fundamentally innovative because now you have a world where a person doesn't actually need to think through bridging. They can basically control their wallet with the funds that they have where they have it, but now they can also they can buy it, they can sell it, they can stake it on like all sorts of things. And I think that the future, like we believe that the future is one where the use case of a blockchain is going to be abstracted away and stuff that you see in the back, like the HTTPS on a browser. You don't really think, you know, it's secure, but you don't think that deeply about it. Like that way, I think there's a world where a person can buy a basket without necessarily averaging by participating. So they get to participate in the upside, but also maintain their position in their parent chain, basically. And this is one of the innovations that I think is going to power a lot of applications in this. So that's why we're very excited about going live on Solana. I think it's going to create a lot more innovative products that come out of it.
Yeah, I think that fundamentally goes to the argument of self-custody, like the kind of idea that Bitcoin really originated with, like not your keys, not your crypto. We are like doing a lot of kind of derivatives on how do you think about the angle of self-custody? Like how important do you think it is in regards to the product you're building?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think from a user standpoint, as good as it is, people don't really think that deeply about like self-custody as we as people in crypto make it out to be. You speak to a person that's never interacted with crypto, they're probably not going to care that much. In fact, they're going to see that as a red flag. Like, you're telling me there's no forgot password button. I'm going to have to custody this myself. What does that even mean? And so I think at the end of the day, self-custody presents benefits of control that are unique, that benefit both people in crypto as well as people outside. So let me give you an example for both, right? So people in crypto that control it or own the asset inside their wallet now have a possibility to go and lend it, stake it, borrow against it. They're preventing themselves from blow up risk where a vault gets hacked, which is fairly common, by the way. Anytime you have someone that says, Suraj, why don't you give me your money? I'm going to manage a vault. There is a non-zero likelihood that you may not get the money back. Whereas when you own the underlying asset, but the asset manager is managing the asset but that sits inside your wallet, you're adhering to the fundamental principle of crypto, which is self-custody. It allows you to now do different things with it, but at the same time, you can choose not to do them as well. And I think that's fundamentally very important and innovative to people in crypto. Now, for people outside of crypto that don't care that much about self-custody, it presents the possibility of having very interesting combinations of financial products. You want defense mode, you want the Nancy Pelosi tracker. The only reason these are possible is because you're able to bundle them in a UI level abstraction and not a smart contract level abstraction. So what that means is you're just seeing this as a bundled worldview that you're able to rebalance. And that I think leads to faster innovation cycles, better products, better APYs, better, and at the end of the day, as a consumer of these things, the only thing you want is for those cycles to go faster and faster so that we all as humanity that's using finance start to win more meaningfully. So I think there are a lot of resonant goals there that the design choice enables. Are we deeply married to it? Well, we want what's best for our users. Secure, fast, convenient, that gives them control of what they're owning and resonates with the principles and the values that they have as well. And this for us, I think, is why self-custody is an important design principle right now.
That point of view is valuable for people both really care about custodying their asset, but also people who just care about getting a good product. And if you view that as one of the North Star of how you should approach a product, we will see better products in this space. And one thing I heard that IKA is working on something called encrypt privacy, like going just to understand your point of view. I'm not sure if you're integrating that product or not, but what do you think about privacy on blockchains?
I think so. Privacy in a more general sense is something that is an important value, but also at the same time, your privacy often comes at the cost of like better quality for some of the things that you're doing, right? And what I mean by that is I think fundamentally everyone is entailed to the right of having privacy to their transactions, to the thing that they're doing, to the baskets that they own, etc. But that said, sometimes when you go down deep down the trenches of crypto, there is a commonplace mistake that we over engineer or over index on the privacy aspect as a way to, and this could be like just my point of view a little bit. But that said, I think fundamentally, when you pay attention to user needs, some users do need privacy as one of their core tenets and core principles. Perhaps they need it in order to feel safe, secure. That's when all of a sudden all of the technologies that we have start to make like deep bits of sense. For us, when we think about what privacy means, is if a person were to build a basket or deviate from a basket, what would it take for us to be able to tell them that, hey, this is what's going to happen, without them having to, or without everyone seeing the underlying strategy that's being played out? That for us is probably the deepest meaning of privacy at this point. Is like private baskets or enabling baskets that might be private. And there are some players that have been doing a phenomenal job of enabling that. I think Encrypt with IKA is actually a really interesting use case of this that I think we actually will build on top of it and see how it goes. But that said, I think our users also want to see what's inside at times and poke around.
Yeah.
And so that's a method of building trust. So unless privacy is a feature, it can sometimes be a bug as well. So we like to talk to our users, learn more about it, and then go to market with
privacy. One of the arguments I have heard that a lot of institutional players are not choosing blockchain because they have big positions, and these positions are mostly not public, and for obvious reasons. If you are making a move, if you are making some hedging move, or if you are making some arbitrage move, that needs to be like, that information may not need to be public. At the same time, if just going back 2008 financial crisis, we could have actually profited from some of that information being public. So what do you think about privacy in that aspect?
A great question. I think it's an important right that's eventually going to come through, that I think different players are figuring out different approaches to doing it. I like to think of it as the elephant that everyone is touching from different angles to see what the main kind of big picture is. I think that at the end of the day, I think this would end up forming a bit of my opinion as opposed to it being grounded in, because I personally wouldn't have the strongest worldview on this piece. But that said, I think it's super important for people to find solutions that resonate with their values. And in this case, I think things that players like Zcash are doing, and Aztec, Encrypt, and a whole host of others in this domain are enabling for a world where people can have meaningful cover as long as they're doing the right thing. I think at the end of the day, I think technology is just an enabler for what they want to do underneath. And I think that there are a lot of really good solutions that enable this.
Yeah. Now moving to the last part of the conversation, you said that you are in Miami and you were at a SUI event yesterday evening. You are building on Solana. How do you think about these blockchains like SUI, for example? Just to give you context, like yesterday I read a tweet. It's not a tweet directly from Anatoly, but Anatoly was speaking and the Solana main account was retweeting it, that the most important thing that is going to matter is the speed and price of transactions. Like the faster and cheaper it is, that's going to really matter a lot. And how do you think about fundamental infrastructure like these layer ones, like Ethereum, Solana, SUI? And specifically, you've been to a SUI event, what vibes are you getting? What do you think? How do you think about these new chains?
A great question. I think speed matters a lot. Let's just park it at that. I think speed matters a lot, especially as we're onboarding the NASDAQ and JP Morgan and Charles Schwab, etc. Like institutional rails coming to the blockchain do mean that speed matters a lot. But at the same time, if you think about network effects and developers building on top of it, like builders, I think that also suddenly creates a really interesting network effect and moat where that feeds into kind of the flywheel of more transactions, more volume, more builders, therefore more users. And I'm very bullish on the space as a whole. And I think based on meeting folks in the ecosystem yesterday and chatting to people out there, my observation is and has been that I think eventually the world is going to be a one where bridges and chains and ecosystems are all just one unit, and we're all trying to grow a share of the pie. And I think products like Cesto enable for the pie to be accessible to the user in a really simplistic way. And for us, at the end of the day, I think, in speaking to different ecosystems and like seeing, while we're definitely building some of our core tech on Solana, I think enabling some of the users to tap into these opportunities that may or may not be possible elsewhere is an important priority, because over time we want to accelerate and grow and scale the pie quite a bit. And so upon speaking to more people across ecosystems, we're very excited by their mission. And I think Sui has a lot of merits around speed and scalability and security, and moves a brilliant language. And the people that started Sui as well have put a lot of thought into where the industry is headed. And so I think there's a lot of wins, and there's some of these tokens are going live on Solana, some of the builders are building across. And I think that we live in a world that's fairly compact, and more compact than we can imagine. There is no us versus them. And I do think that we stand to gain a lot by working together and creating an outcome for a specific thing. Think tapping into yield sources that may be on different chains, or tapping into asset liquidity that's sitting on different chains. And I think players that enable that through bridges and other solutions will be the picks and shovels that over time make a pretty large dent in the universe.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why being in crypto is really exciting, because there's never a dull moment. Of course, we have bear markets, but from a technology perspective, from product perspective, there is always innovation, and it's always that itself is so positive. I think fundamentally in crypto, it's about surviving cycles. And for me personally, this is what helped me survive, because you look at this ecosystem, these products, these new chains, it's like chains like Sui, it fundamentally anchors your conviction on facts, on technology, that, oh, this is progressing. And products like Cesto, it's the same. It's, oh, genuinely cool product. Coming to the final question of the podcast, you have seen really iconic products, right? What do you say? Polymarket. Polymarket is so iconic that if you think about prediction market, most likely you are thinking about Polymarket. If you think about AMM, you're probably thinking about Uniswap. So what do you want people to remember Cesto about? What's your vision for Cesto?
The way I view it, owning a specific territory and niche is very important in the idea of product building right now. And for us, I think owning the concept of baskets will suddenly make it a very interesting place. And baskets being these wrapper products, these vaults, these self-custody. And to different audiences, baskets mean different things. If you never touch crypto, you're probably going to think, oh yeah, okay, modern index funds. To a person that's invested in stocks, you're like, oh yeah, it's a bundled wrapper product. It's to someone that's in crypto, you're probably going to say, hey, it's like vaults. And I think for us, dominating one category at a time and really going focused, such that the idea of a basket just suddenly makes people think about Cesto, is probably what I think we would be excited to see in the next few years. And it's already happening. Today, we get tagged a bunch whenever there's a hot take that's happening. People are out there that tag us and say, hey, is there a Cesto basket for this? And I think we're only getting started. Like, it's the tip of the iceberg, because over time, hot takes are not going to go into like content or tweets. They're actually going to end up at Cesto. And more people wake up in the morning are going to open their phone, see what's happening, and then check Cesto for like cool new baskets that are being created. Two kind of like meta points on this. One is, I think narrative liquidity or narrative dominance is probably one of the most important, or the skill to do that is one of the most important skills for this day and age. So that's why we own the word basket. We own Cesto means basket. We own the emoji of a basket, like in the sense that we really try to dominate and show up with this specific like worldview. And why that is I think more and more as like companies, like big companies like OpenAI, etc., acquire companies like OpenClaw and TBPN, the world is moving towards a place where there are certain things that capital can't buy. You can't stop a person from thinking about the first thing that pops up in their head. And so for me, when I play the one word association game, when people say, hey, I'm thinking of capital in baskets, the first thing that comes up is like, yeah, Cesto, 100% Cesto. And that's happening right now. There are people that are thinking about it every day. And I think that's what it takes to win a consumer space. And for us, I think in 5 years, one is the category for baskets exists, which is like what's already there. I think Vaults have done a really good job of building like that. And then dominating that like specific area could actually be like one of the most important like things to win in the next like few months. But I'm very excited by this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I thank you very much for all of the wonderful questions.
This is the last question. I thought that was the last question, but I have to ask you one more question before you go. So because like when I think about the full conversation we just had, nobody can talk about Cesto like you just did. And we are watching a trend where founders really have to step up and talk about their product out there, being out there. This is a new trend in the sense that a couple of years old, because I truly believe that you can only you can speak about Cesto like this, and only you can actually convey that conviction in that product because you put your blood, sweat, and tears to build this product. And I'm just interested in this angle because I have a business which focuses on founder-led marketing, and I'm a huge believer in that. Like the question is basically this: what do you think the role of founders right now, if you're building there, how should a founder like push out the message? What are your learnings from building Cesto so far? And that's basically the wrap-up question.
Right now, the role of a founder is evolving every single day. To me, in essence, what it is, figuring out a way to make people care about your worldview and seeing that worldview through. And then the second one is for you to ensure that you're able to build allies and build mind share and build like all these sort of things in order to get there. I think that founder-led growth or going direct, as Lulu Cheng talks about it, is one of the most important transitions that we've had occur in the last 2 decades of founders building distribution of their own, communicating their energy directly to people, building personal brands around how they think about the world. Probably one of the most consequential changes. And I think deeply about this and why it's important. And I think at the end of the day, people buy from people. Crypto is a small industry. Every time you show up, you're seeing same people, different hats, different companies, but at the end of the day, people connect with people. And I think that in showing up in a certain way and presenting yourself in a certain way, you suddenly have a really good way to win the world. And I think that authenticity, as an example, I'm very camera shy, but showing up to talk to you, Suraj, has been like, you've done a really good job of putting me in the zone of talking about my worldview and my story and how I show up. And I think at the end of the day, the more that people do that, the more we have connection to the person, connection to the product, and connection to the company and the business that they're trying to build. And I think that is where it's at, and that's where it's going to be. And I think the role of a founder right now is to ensure that nobody out there is telling the story better than they are when it comes to their own authentic worldview. And yeah, I think that in essence, I think is where the game is at for founders, in addition to, of course, deepening your moat and talking to investors. These all just means to getting to that outcome. But creating a clear through line, that message, that delivery, that comm strategy, that name, brand, product. I think at the end of the day, all of these are just means to getting there. And yeah, I learn something new every day. And I think I can't wait to write a little more about this because the last few months have been exhilarating and lots of good learnings.
Thank you, Jason. And I believe that Cesto will be an iconic product. And I think that's an outcome you will definitely be able to achieve. So all the best. And thanks again for
Thank you so much, Suraj. Thank you for your belief in us. And I appreciate, I'm looking forward to seeing this go live. And Thank you so much once again.